Welcome to the Health Coach Nation podcast. I'm your host, Hailey Rowe, and I help you get clients consistently, market your standout offers, build your business foundations like your messaging, your niche, your offer, and I help you build a sustainable, profitable coaching business that works with your schedule. And I'm so excited to dive into the show. Here we go. Guess what? I'm so excited to announce that my free private training sharing how to book paying clients consistently without posting more or needing a big audience is now live for an encore. You can check it out at haileyrowe.com/training. You get to learn more about the inner circle. You get to learn the behind the scenes of what I share with my clients and learn how you can get your next clients without needing to obsess with stressful launches, annoying tech, all that kind of stuff. So check it out and can't wait to hear how it goes for you. Hey, I am here live today with Adam Strong, and we are going to be talking about how to create your own summit, what that even means, why you would want to do that. And Adam, why don't you first just introduce yourself about you and who you are and what got you into summits in the first place?
Yeah, appreciate the introduction, Hailey. Super excited about today, and really excited about hopefully you guys get some great value bombs from today's episode and think a little bit different. So a little bit about myself really is I've been an entrepreneur since the age of 11. I started my first business collecting golf balls. So when I grew up, I didn't particularly come from a great childhood. And so, need come to must, right? You've got to go out and hustle somewhere. And so I started collecting golf balls and foraging through bushes, jumping in streams and selling the golf balls on the fairway, trying to avoid getting hit by the golf ball, of course. So that's what kind of like all started for me, really. What I was going to say to you. And then from there, really, I've really kind of always had that appetite. That's where I really got my appetite for entrepreneurship and sales and negotiation. I learned from a really young age from that. And then got into, obviously, long distance running, studied and trained with some of the top Olympians in the world in distance running. The current world and Olympic champion, Mo Farah, was my training partner. So I took a lot of stuff from athletics and entrepreneurship. And I suppose that's how I've kind of like made myself as I am today, which is running an international business consultancy. So I do a lot of strategy work with a lot of leaders in the professional services industry, more specifically, but also working with coaches and consultants, management consultants, and people in the leadership realm as well. So that's kind of a little bit about me. And you may have heard of the Game Changers experience, because we also had Hailey as well on the podcast, which I can't even remember. It must have been. It was definitely a good few weeks ago. We had so much fun, and we poured in glass and stuff. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for that update. And I started in entrepreneurship young too, and it's something that never gets old to me. There's always more to learn. And just a heads up, when you're moving around, for some reason the internet's coming a little choppy. So I'm going to ask you to stay still if you can.
Sure.
And as far as what you were saying with Olympics, so I have met 3 people who have become either business consultants or like online entrepreneurs ever since being a gold medalist or in athletics. So it's really interesting because I think a lot of it overlaps as far as like facing adversity and needing to train and practice and all that kind of stuff. So it's interesting you say that. Now I want to dig into why having your own summit would be a marketing strategy and ask you some deeper questions about that. But first, let's just talk about what is a summit and why would you want to do something like that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I call it a digital summit, right? So since kind of the pandemic and stuff, I'm a public speaker, so I do a lot of keynote speaking. A lot of companies pay me a lot of money. But when the pandemic came along, all that work dried up. And so one of the things that I had to do was I had to look for opportunities. And so one of the things that I needed to do was to kind of say, okay, what am I listening right now? What am I hearing right now? What I was listening to the pains of all the people that were going through uncertainty at the time. And so I thought to myself, you know what? Why not bring my speaking to them. So we created a virtual or digital summit. I had zero experience, by the way, Hailey, zero experience in running my first summit, okay? And create this huge vision. That's really the crux of creating a summit, if you like, is you've got to make sure that you've got a amazing vision, because you have to sell that vision not only to people that you collaborate, but also to your audience members as well, if that makes sense. So created the summit. We went from, came up with the idea in March 2020. Launched in, when was it? Around May time. It was around mid-May. All right. So we went from idea to execution in 7 weeks. It was, we did, I think it was like 32 speakers. It wasn't live, so it was pre-recorded. And essentially what we did is we had this summit over 30 days. And so it was a complete experiment to me. The idea wasn't about making money. It was about making impact. That was the whole premise of the whole thing. It was about making an impact, but also to be able to be able to help people go from that, that insecurity, that uncertainty mindset to a place of safety and security and empowerment more than anything else. So that was the big idea, Hailey. And so we had 6 full-time staff working on different projects. And like I said, idea to execution. And we also, we made over £50,000 during that first summit, right? So that was a great result. That was the intention, by the way. We had 2,300 people that come through the summit that had either opted in, put their details in and either attended a session or numerous sessions or whatever it might be. So, we had people from all over the world. We collaborated with some of the biggest names in the industry, from people like Jack Canfield from Chicken Soup for the Soul. We had Dr. John Demartini, who's one of the world's human behavior specialists. We had Darren Lecter, who used to be the previous CEO of the Rich Dad Poor Dad organization. So these are just some of the names that I kind of like sold the vision to, because I have a very rich network of connected thought leaders. So that kind of gives you a little bit of an idea.
Love that. So what I'm hearing and what I want to share with the people listening is, number one, you did that as a way to sell. You sold the vision. I love the way you said that. You had a vision for it. You wanted to create impact, and to get those big names as your guests, you led with that vision, as opposed to, hey, can you be in this summit for me, and making it all about you or anything like that. So I want to come back to that a little bit, but also it grew your list tremendously. So that's a great lead generation strategy. And it also led to nurtured leads who ended up buying. So that's great. Mm-hmm. Now, when it comes to putting on a big event like this, it does sound like you had some full-time people helping you. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Either on a full-time or a part-time capacity, depending on what the job role was.
Gotcha. And so when you were trying to come up with your vision, how did you come up with that? How does somebody get clear on what should their summit vision be?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So in terms of the summit, you've got to think about, number one is you've got to think about, what is the big transformation? What is the big result that you want to create for the audience, right? Because if you can get an idea or some clarity around the transformation, because remember, people don't attend events, they don't invest in people like you or me, Hailey. They invest in results. They invest in transformation. So if you get an idea and an understanding of what that message looks like, right? So you've got to get an understanding of what the transformation result is. But number two, you've got to get an understanding of what the actual message is. So if you understand what the messaging is and how you can help people, right, then you can kind of formulate a vision based around that information, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And for those of you listening who feel like, I don't even know where to start, I don't know my message, I just want to say Black Friday is coming up, and I have a profitable niche and messaging course coming out. So if you've been looking to get clear on what the heck is your before and after message, and what makes that stand out, feel free to put niche in the comments on this LinkedIn video, or if you're listening to the replay, you can DM me on Instagram at Hailey_Rowe if you're curious about that course. But I want to go back, Adam, to what you said about, okay, you had these people in your network. So how did you build any tips for someone who's like, I want to do a summit one day, but I feel like right now I don't have the network to get really good guests. So any tips on building that network or how you got those great big players?
Yeah. So basically, when it comes to, growing a network, it takes years of nurturing. It takes years of understanding. There's a few things that I learned from the whole experience, right? So I want to give a really good example. So I met a guy from Canada, and we met, I don't know, it must have been around 5-6 years ago, something like that. And we attended an event in London at the British Academy Film Awards. So we were up for not a film BAFTA or anything like that, but we were up for an award for being best speakers and best authors, right? So we met. He'd flown over from Canada, and we'd obviously been speaking at the same event. His background was that he went through a massive life trauma, had a massive accident, was in hospital one day, and on the TV when he was in hospital, he saw Jack Canfield. And whatever Jack had said in the message had actually transformed his life. He turned his life around. He was actually feeling sorry for himself in the hospital, and he was like, there's something's hit a nerve here, what Jack has actually said to me. And so he told me this story, and it sat in the back of my brain bank, if you like, right? And I remember our conversation, and one of the first persons that I reached to was him. And I said to him, I was like, hey, listen, I know that people are going to be inspired by your accident and, the way you kind of built yourself up and how you just kind of transformed things. And then he said, yeah, I'd be honored to. I'd love to be able to help your audience. And then I said to him, do you think that Jack Canfield would be interested too? He goes, for sure, I can always ask. If you don't ask, you don't get, right? So he asked, and me and Jack got on a call. He gave the introduction, and that's how me and Jack actually met, was through my contact over in Canada. So it's about making sure that you can ask for good recommendations, right? So you've got the vision, you ask for recommendations, but also when it comes to building human connection, which is even more important, especially in this day and age, right, is that you've got to learn to build trust. It's really important. It takes time to build trust. It really does. It can take months, if not years, to build trust. But you've got to have at the back of your mind, you've got to think to yourself, it's not what's in it for you, what's in it for them, what's important to them, what's their core values, what's their behaviors, is it there's charities involved in them, what's the big collaboration, where's the alignment between what you offer and what they offer, and how can you potentially work together and support each other and your audiences. So I hope that kind of gives you some context about how you could effectively build up people. You don't have to have a rich network initially. All it takes is that if you don't ask, you don't get. But you've got to make sure that you nail that pitch as well. So you've got to make sure that you're clear, because clarity is going to be super key. A lot of people are busy, okay? But introductions are the best source and best way to get to the big names.
Yes, I love that. Yeah, we had another episode with Katarina Rando about speaking gigs, and she was saying too, warm intros are the best thing to, get your foot in the door somewhere. So always asking your network, hey, does anybody know anyone in the blah, blah, blah field? Or does anybody know any podcast hosts looking for guests or whatever? Can be really useful. So when you had that chat with Jack Canfield and you're going through your pitch, you obviously had a clear vision, but did you focus on what kind of things did you focus on to get these guests in your pitch?
Well, I think it's important that number one is that you've got the messaging and vision clear. That's in stone, right? It's also about asking the right questions. So you want to find out, like what they're working on right now, so what's the big focus? Okay. You want to find out how exactly, like I knew for a fact that at that time, Jack was in the same position as I was. His speaking gigs were all evaporated. He had a lot of time on his hands. He was stuck in California at the time with his wife. And so he was trying to really trying to make sense of everything. And then I gave him the opportunity. So I gave him the opportunity to be able to come and speak on my platform, to be able to make a huge impact with the audience. And he's like, I love that. I love the fact that you do it. And we gave this away for free, Hailey. So people could do it for free. And that was the real big game changer. You could do it for free, or you could make it to any of the sessions, whatever it is. People could then purchase, obviously, purchase a package or whatever it might be, and go from there. But then they didn't miss out on what was actually said and things like that. So it's about making sure that you ask the right questions, you come in at the angle of support, collaboration, being able to understand what makes them tick, what's their hot buttons. Okay, I know exactly what the hot buttons of Jack Canfield is. I know exactly, because I'd already done my homework. I'd already done the preparation before my conversation. So that's really, really key before you jump into the deep end and speak to some of the big boys. But also the other thing you have to bear in mind is that they're no different from us. Yeah, they're not like the president of the United States or anything like that, right? They're no different. They're still human beings. It's just about making sure that you articulate a language that they're busy. You're going to have their interest in mind, and turn your ego off, and they'll be interested.
I love that. Great tips. Yes. So when you decided, all right, we're going to do this summit, we're going to have this many people, you had this team helping you. What were some of the activities your team had to do in preparation for a summit? Because I think we need to talk about what stage in your business this is right for, because it's a lot of work to put on a summit. And I personally have been in a lot of summits. I've never put on my own quite yet. But what would you say is criteria to be like, is this the right time for me to put on a summit? And then what are some of the activities your team had to be doing in preparation for it?
Well, you picked up something, Rich, is really interesting, but I'm going to challenge that thought process. I believe that anyone can create a summit, regardless. It doesn't matter if you are a startup company or an experienced business owner or business leader. It makes no difference. Fundamentals don't change, right? But first of all, you've got to think to yourself, why am I doing this? Like, what is the purpose? Is it to create leads? Is it to create sales? Is it to create human connection? Like, what is the real result for you? What do you want to? Why do you want to do it? Okay, so you've got to have that in mind. So that's the first thing. Secondly, once you then make a decision on what is it that you want to get out of the summit, okay, is then to think to yourself, okay, so what are the skills that I possess? What are the skill sets that I possess? What are the things that I enjoy as part of running my business? So, Hailey, there will be things in your business that you enjoy, right? So that will be like, whether it be, I don't know, sales, having calls, or whatever it might be. But there'll be things that you've identified that you really enjoy. But there are also things that you absolutely would give it to anybody else for $1 million, right? Because you don't enjoy doing it, but there are other people out there that are 10 times better than you, and they're probably 10 times cheaper than you as well. So what I tend to do is I tend to write down, okay, what do I want to do as part of the summit? So for me, I like to make sure that I'm leading it. Okay, so there is a bit of planning involved. Okay, so I'm the visionary. Obviously, I've got to do interviews. Okay, build the brand. Everything else is secondary. So that means deciding to myself, okay, what are the who's that I need to put in place that's going to help me create this amazing event? So let's just think about this, right? What are the who's? So what are the who's that we had in our business? A decent copywriter. So a copywriter that can convert landing pages. Super important. Make sure you do diligence, because copywriting is so underestimated. A really good copywriter. And yeah, you're going to pay a bit of money for it, but guess what? It's going to pay dividends. So copywriter, 100%. Number 2, an admin person or someone that is going to help manage the speakers in terms of have they got their speakers agreement sorted? Have they got a folder of the things that you need in order to help you prepare for the summit, right? So it's doing all the kind of back end stuff type of thing, right? So that's the second thing. Thirdly, have you got a graphic designer? So you're not going to be sitting there on Canva creating your own graphics, are you? It's going to be taking hours when you get somebody else who can do it, probably for $20, $30 here or whatever it might be. But a good graphic designer that really kind of like sets out, that is affiliated with your branding colors and stuff like that. So that could be the third one. Fourth one, someone who manages your social media or can create extra content. So one of the things that I teach a lot of my clients is when you're launching your own summit or a campaign, whatever you want to call it, challenge, campaign, whatever you want to call it, is I teach people how to market the Apple way. What do I mean by that, Hailey? Okay, so if you can imagine, right? So around September time, Apple always brings out a new product, right? So we just had the Apple iPhone 14, right? And then they bought a new laptop out, and God knows what else that they bought out, right? But what they do is there's a campaign leading up to the product launch. Now they've already sold, because they've got raving fans that want to buy whatever it is that they're trying to sell. They have raving fans. How can you learn from that experience? How can you learn the marketing tactics about how you could then translate that and put that into your summit? That's what we're teaching them. So, for example, like one of the activities that I used to do leading up to the summit launch was I made sure that twice a day, morning and evening, I would pour into people's glasses, get on here, the live stream, and tell people about what we've got coming up on the summit, why they need to be booking, what are the benefits, so really kind of getting people super excited, but more importantly, to get them to the point where they're like, okay, just send me the link. I'm in, right? You know what I'm saying? It's like, just sign me up. I'm just in. I'm super excited. So it's like, energy is contagious. So that's what's really going to sell is your energy. And that's the biggest thing. Yes, encouragement. Yes, enthusiasm. But energy is going to be really key as part of kind of selling the Apple way. So I hope that kind of gives you some value bombs there.
Yes, I love that. Thank you. So that sounds awesome as far as, the who's. And there's a really good book by Ben Hardy called Who Not How. And for anybody listening, it's a great book. I highly recommend it. So when it comes to the promotion of this summit, it sounds like you went live, you talked about the why, you talked about the benefits. You probably also provided marketing materials or copy or emails or something that guests could send. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. So things like sending out to your list is going to be absolutely key. It's also going to be, so you've got to think about how is it that you're going to be able to create as many touch points as you can in the shortest time possible. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely makes sense. So marketing wise, those are the main things you did, or was there anything else you did to market it?
So it was mainly live streaming, using our list and email marketing. Yes, social media. So it'll be like creating quotes. So we created, create quotes, put them on social media and distribute those on the social media channels as well. What else did we do? And also podcasting as well. So, jumping onto other people's shows, and they were inspired by, the excitement of the whole event, right? So you've got like an event where you've got all these amazing experts and thought leaders in one place. Like, who wouldn't want you to host a show like that? So it's a great branding exercise more than anything else. Oh, and also we had a press release as well that went out. So we had a worldwide press release that distributed all over in different touch points around the world and around the continent. So yeah, those were our 5 main avenues.
Cool. And just for anybody listening, a press release is something where you're announcing it through media channels. Can you elaborate on that a little?
Yeah, so a press release is effectively generally like a shortened down article, okay? And then it's put onto distribution sites, which is picked up by some of the major distribution channel or players, and that could be picked up by someone like Yahoo, for example. It could be picked up on Google. It could be picked up on one of the PR distribution sites. And a lot of journalists, a lot of media outlets, they love content, right? Because it helps them. It helps them and their website. So it creates this kind of like win-win situation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that. Awesome. And what about after the summit? So what were some things you learned or you debriefed on, or mistakes that you see when people do summits, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, there was a a really good one. I felt like after the summit, I was exhausted because there was a lot of work that went into it. And I'm not saying, and here's probably one of the reasons why a lot of people don't do summits, because they know it requires hard work. But the thing is, Hailey, is that the harder the work, the bigger the payoff. It's as simple as that, right? So you've got to kind of like balance it out in a nutshell. So for me, some of the big key takeaways was don't do it over 30 days, right? 30-day marathon, creating over 120 email automations from scratch. I wouldn't recommend it, and that's just the automation, right? That's just the back end, right? Honestly, if you'd have seen our back end, it was a mammoth. Like, people don't appreciate what goes behind the scenes. Like, most people that are participants are like, oh, great, we get to listen to Sharon Lecter or Jack Canfield or whatever it is. Yeah, but you didn't know what goes on behind the scenes, ladies and gents, right? It's insane what goes beyond that. And then you've got to kind of articulate that in a certain way. But anyway, so don't do it over 30 days. Secondly was, what was the other thing I was going to say to you? Don't do it for free. And the reason don't do it for free, even if you're charging like $7, right? Then there's a tangible value attached to that, if that makes sense, right? People are more than likely to turn up to your event if they know that they paid a small fee for it. Okay, so that was another thing. $7, not really a lot, right? Or whatever. What else was I going to say to you? The other thing I was going to say to you as well is it was a great testing ground. Okay, what I mean by testing ground is a great testing ground that when I interviewed all the speakers, now I interviewed every single speaker, and to understand, number one, is that we have a number of expectations. This is a collaborative event. This is not the Adam Strong show, right? It's not the Hailey Rowe show. This is a collaborative event, which means that the expectations is that, hey, you are coming onto my platform. I'll do the donkey work, but there are some requirements that we need from you. You need to be able to promote it. You need to be able to tell people in your list. You need to be able to have at least 10,000 people in your network. So there were certain requirements. There were certain expectations. And so all of the people that said, yes, I'm in. I'm definitely in. I'm interested. You got me. I'm sold. But then I knew that I wouldn't say the majority, but I would say the minority of people didn't do what they would say they would do. And guess what? I remember that because that means that I would never collaborate with those people before. It was just that they just didn't fulfill their promises. And I'm really big into making sure that there is a promise to be filled, not just on my part, but also fulfilling the promises of the audience, because that's going to be super important. So that is that. And also the last one I would say is to make sure, now we monetize our summit, right? So we commercialize it. That's where we made it, what do you call it? That's where we made our revenue from, which obviously pay for the costs. So it paid for the cost. There was a lot of costs involved and stuff like that, but we also made profit. Not intentionally, but we made profit, right? Which was kind of cool. That was just a bonus. But then we also got the 2,300 leads for free. You ran a Facebook ads campaign, and you spent, even $4,000 on a campaign, and you got 2,300. You're probably pretty happy about that. I mean, that's a great conversion. Mm-hmm. The fact of the matter is that we had to put in a lot of hard work to get 2,300 leads. Yes, we made profit. It was a gamble, but guess what? You don't try these things, you're never going to know, right?
Absolutely. Awesome tips. Yes. So, Adam, this has been super helpful. Thank you so much for sharing all the good tips. Where can people connect with you, find you, stay in touch with you?
Sure. Probably the best thing is to connect with me on LinkedIn, because I'm always hanging out on LinkedIn. You're welcome to check out the podcast, the Game Changers Experience. You're welcome to check that out as well. Where else am I? And you also can check out my website, which is called adamstrong.net.
Excellent. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today to share your tips and wisdom, and I'll talk to you soon.
Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks so much for listening to this podcast. And if it's really helpful for you, I'd really appreciate if you share it and or leave a written podcast review. This tells the podcast sites that our show is useful and it will be promoted to more people that way. Thanks again.